Our last storyteller for tonight is Holly Hart Raiborn. Holly is here to tell us a story about how quitting is a family tradition passed down by her dad. Here is our last storyteller, Holly Hart Raiborn. Y'all make some noise.
Quitting is a family tradition. My dad quits jobs as if quitting jobs was his job, and he has a quota he needs to reach. Growing up, I thought that was normal. Dads just have a lot of jobs. So when my dad picked me up for middle school theater practice one afternoon and told me that he had quit his most recent position, I wasn't surprised. When I realized he had done so in just his underwear, and that's why he was rushing me into his truck and speeding out of the school parking lot, that's when I started to have some more questions. Until about a month before this, my dad had been really happy in his job as a field mechanic at an oil field equipment rental company, which is a lot of nouns to describe one blue-collar job. He had been there for about a year at this point, which was a record for our household, and he was really happy until the unthinkable happened. He got promoted. My dad hated being a manager. He hated that he was working longer hours but wasn't getting overtime pay. He hated that he had to deal more directly with the shitty customers. But more than anything, he hated that he couldn't be friends with the other mechanics anymore. In fact, upper management had strictly forbidden it. They said if my dad continued to be buddy-buddy with the other mechanics, then no one would respect him. And my dad really didn't like this. He was not happy about it. But the final straw happened when his boss told him he would need to fire one of the other mechanics, one of his friends, just to make an example out of him, just to get more respect from the other team members. My dad was told it's either him or you. And so my dad quit. There on the spot. He announced to all the mechanics in the shop and some customers in the lobby, I quit. I'm not giving notice and I'm never coming back here. And he started to walk out the door. That's when his boss called out, well, you're going to have to bring back your uniform or it's coming out of your last paycheck. But see, my dad had already just said he's never coming back. So he stripped. Right there in front of God and everybody. He took off his uniform, left it in a pile by the front door of the lobby, and in just his undershirt, some boxers, and his steel-toed work boots, came directly to pick me up from school. I know that might seem kind of childish or irresponsible to some people for a father of two to quit so suddenly, to burn those bridges with no other job lined up. But my dad was is a really skilled mechanic, and he knew he'd be able to find a job easily. He knew his worth, and he knew that that job did not define him. And that's what he was showing my brother and me through example. I got my first job the summer after I turned 16. I was working as a beverage cart operator at a country club, which is a misleadingly luxurious way to say that I was selling overpriced Michelob Ultra to some of the worst men in the city while they played golf. It was a terrible job for terrible pay. I had to smile politely while men older than my grandfather told me how well I filled out my uniform and then tipped me a quarter to buy myself something pretty, you know? And I was so miserable, and I was so tired and drained from that job that in my free time I was too exhausted to even enjoy the rest of my summer. But I felt trapped because in my mind all the good summer jobs had already been taken. But my dad assured me that there would always be another job, and no job was worth being miserable for. So I quit. But I kept my clothes on, or else the creepy customers would have won. Quitting that summer jobs was pretty low stakes, but I remembered my dad's words a few years later when I was making a much bigger life decision. I started grad school for public health in 2019. I was getting my master's in epidemiology, which might sound familiar because epidemiology is the study of the spread of diseases. I had always loved learning, always loved school. I had a great time getting my undergraduate degree from Wellesley College, so going to graduate school seemed like the natural next step. Except I hated it, and I was bad at it. Turns out learning about diseases became a lot less fun in 2020. But I had moved halfway across the country and taken out so many loans. I felt like I had just made this life-defining mistake. I was talking to my dad on the phone after getting yet another D on an assignment when he said something radical. He said, "If you're not happy, why don't you just quit?" And I was taken aback. You can quit school? Didn't sound right to me. But I did my research and it turns out you can. You can quit right in the middle of the semester. And so that's what I did. I quit. I dropped out of grad school in my underwear because I did so from the comfort of my apartment on the registrar's website. I am a grad school dropout, and I guess you could say I'm in the family business because I've never had a job longer than a year. But I just started a new position last week, and fingers crossed this one's going to stick. But even if it doesn't, I'm not worried because my job does not define me. I am happy and healthy, and I can provide for myself. I have time for my friends and my family and my hobbies. My dad taught me that my job doesn't define me, that I'm so much more than my job. And so my advice, my dad's advice, if you're not happy in a job, if a job is making you miserable, quit. Clothing optional, but encouraged. All right, thanks.